I'll introduce our guest in just a second, but for those of you who haven't been here, welcome to District. Welcome to Digital Surgeons within District. This is a marketing design company, consultancy within the Greater District Innovation Center. If any of you'd like after we're done, happy to take you on a little tour. We've got the East Coast's first coding school on site, just opened. Somebody sitting over there who can tell you more. Nadine Krause, Executive Director of Holberton School. We've got another school opening in a couple of weeks. So like I said, if you'd like a tour, happy to do that. You know where the coffee is at this point. Restrooms down the hall and to the left, right near the entrance. So despite all the gear and us sitting up here, these things started as a conversation and continue as a conversation. Last year we sort of moved it to inviting more formal guests and really inviting people who are doing something that had an impact, was innovative, but was ultimately expressive. Right? So I'm not creating something new to create something new, or because it's a cool idea, or because there's a big market for it. I'm creating something new and unprecedented because it's an expression of who I think I am and what I'm up to. Right? So tonight we have with us Slate Liu-Ballard. Slate is co-founder of The Grove and most recently of the State House, which has quickly become one of my favorite spots in this zip code. We'll talk about the State House eventually, but we'll start somewhere else. And before that, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Good.
Good to be at Unstuck.
Unstuck. Unstuck. So here's where I'd love to start. So most everybody that I've had here are folks I've known for a long time. And then it's an opportunity to kind of really dig in on some stuff that maybe I know and that I know that they don't share a lot, but that's important to their journey. Or, you know, Slate and I have talked once, but I am genuinely such a fan of what he's created that, you know, we thought it'd be great to get him in, yeah? Mm-hmm. And so the one time we talked, some cool stuff for me came up about his past, so let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are these little hubs around the country, right? Like you got Austin, Texas. You got Austin, surrounded by Texas. No offense.
Yeah.
You got Madison, surrounded by Wisconsin, right? It's just very different than its broader surroundings. You come from one of those places.
I do.
Fayetteville, Arkansas.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me about Fayetteville. Yeah. Tell us about Fayetteville. What's
well, I think
what's
what's
the
interesting
background
is, you know, I mean, Austin's not so much of a little hub anymore.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
It's
fair enough.
like scaled like crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in one of the littler hubs like this. That's sort of your traditional, what would be a college town that most of us would think of as a college town. And so Fayetteville, Arkansas is where the university is, the main campus is. Arkansas Razorbacks are based out there. And so I grew up in this really sort of, at the time when I was growing up, it was about 55 to 65,000 people. So very small town, but in a region that had, so it goes like Fayetteville, Springdale, Bentonville, or Rogers and Bentonville. Bentonville, does anybody know what is in Bentonville? Anybody do business there? No? Most crowds that I meet do business in Bentonville because that's where Walmart's global headquarters are. So interestingly enough, even though Fayetteville is a very small town and Northwest Arkansas is a very small area respectively, you've got this global, you know, entity there that's bringing lots of dollars into the region, and in a lot of ways they're bringing a lot of art into the region. They're bringing a lot of culture into the region. When I was growing up, the Walton Art Center was created in downtown Fayetteville, right on Dixon Street, which is sort of it's sort of the college drag. I mean, we don't, you know, New Haven, interestingly enough, is not a college town in my opinion. It doesn't act like a college town in many ways. It's not the same.
To be fair, Yale doesn't act like a college, so.
Sure.
In some regards.
You could say that. I mean, I won't say that, but
I mean that. I don't mean that.
No, you don't think that.
I'm on tape now saying that. I have to explain myself. Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, you're right. It's just, interesting enough, like Fayetteville, like the entire state comes to Fayetteville when the Razorbacks play. And so you get this massive influx of people. There is incredible rallying around the sports teams and around the arts that are there. And, Fayetteville does a really good job of like blocking off all of Dixon Street at times and running. I used to go, as a kid, I went to all these festivals and street fests and musical festivals and arts festivals. And, my parents were really great at cultivating my creative side and put me in all sorts of art classes and things like that. But, going back to your question, Fayetteville is one of these interesting little towns that is this small town in the northwest corner of Arkansas, about an hour from Oklahoma and about an hour from Missouri, and it has an incredible amount of culture. So
yeah. So when we talked, and you just alluded to a little bit here, you know this kind of notion of art and music really being a catalyst for a community.
Yes.
So what are the kind of stuff that you were seeing early on that really
had
an impact in that area?
I mean, growing up, I saw a city that was incredibly vibrant in a lot of ways because of their arts and culture. Fayetteville wasn't the place where Walmart was. It wasn't Tyson Chicken is also located in Northwest Arkansas. It wasn't the place where all the global headquarters had their spots, but it's where everybody wanted to live. And it was where everybody wanted to live and stay and grow their families because it had all of this culture and was very vibrant. And now Bentonville, which is where Walmart's headquarters has realized this, and they're trying to expand their culture. So now they've got a children's museum up there, and they now have this Crystal Bridges Arts Gallery, which is this unbelievably gorgeous American art museum that's up there now. And so they're really trying to create this kind of culture and space. And so, I saw this early on. It made a real impact on me, and I've always been somebody who's been interested in the arts. So
you have that experience growing up. Somewhere along the line, you land in Connecticut and get a degree in business. What?
Yeah, my degree was actually in organizational behavior. So. It wasn't really that. I was a non-traditional college student, so I did not go to college right out of high school. And I went to Southern Connecticut State here, hoot hoot for the Owls. I created my own degree. It didn't have, the university did not have an organizational behavior degree, but it had an organizational behavior class, and it had an organizational psychology class, and it had organizational communications, and all these things that I fit together to form what I refer to as an organizational behavior degree. And so in that, I started studying creativity and creative cultures. And I actually started following an MIT professor named Ed Schein, who, you like Ed?
I love Ed. We're going to talk about Ed. Okay,
good. Let's talk about Ed.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, Ed inspired the Grove in many ways. Which is really crazy. So I read Organizational Change and Leadership, his sort of big book on organizational culture, and he talks about in there about how culture is formed through the way we problem solve, and it's a management or an organization's way, how they problem solve and how people in that organization choose to problem solve ends up socializing other employees and other folks within that organization, and it ends up forming the basis of culture and how things should be done there, regardless of if it works or doesn't work. It's just it's how people problem solve ends up being a very strong foundation for the basic assumptions that people have into how they do their work and how they get things done. And so I started asking the question, well, can this be applied to a city? Can we take these principles of culture and this idea that maybe if you change the way you problem solve and change the perception of how you problem solve, that it could actually start to change culture within the city. And so the Grove was formed out of that to be a highly collaborative, open, creative space in which people from a diverse range of backgrounds could come together and connect with one another and maybe problem solve in more collaborative ways and not such siloed ways.
So was the Grove the first experiment, or were you?
The Grove was the first
Yeah.
experiment. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you come across Shine and some others
Yeah.
in
So I literally,
undergrad.
I started the Grove. I graduated in May or whatever, and the Grove started in September of that year.
Fascinating.
So
Yeah, Ed's work looms large in our. So I'm an organizational psychologist by
Yep.
formal training.
Yep.
I'm on faculty in the neuropsych program. Shine's a couple of his books, Humble Inquiry in particular, is a required reading in a couple of the classes.
Very
yeah,
good.
Yeah, it's great.
Very
So okay, so Grove is the first experiment. Yeah.
Grove was my first experiment.
At the time, if I'm recalling, at the time you guys opened Grove, that was not sort of an established concept, right? Just the whole co-working, co-creating, co-anything.
Yep. No, it was not an established concept in Connecticut. That's
Right.
for sure. I mean, we had inspiration from other places throughout the world. We were looking at a group called the Hub. I forget what it's called now, but I think it's called the Hub Network now or something like that. It was based out of London and several offices in the UK.
So contextualize this for us.
Yeah,
What year?
This is 2010.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is pre-WeWork.
Pre-WeWork, it's
Yeah.
Green Desk is going on. I remember
Yeah.
seeing them on the internet
Yeah.
when Googling around for co-working spaces.
Okay.
So Green Desk was around. Green Desk was the precursor to WeWork.
Yep.
Anybody doesn't know that. We saw the Hub. That was really inspirational for us. And one spot in particular was called the Center for Social Innovation in Toronto. Was sort of our main inspiration. And at the time, like right before we opened, that center open sourced their model. They just literally released like all of these materials on how they created space and how they created community and all these different things. And so we really looked at that as like a space that we loved and thought was a great model. And now they have a location in New York City as well.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So you make that pitch. Obviously, you're not writing a 7-figure check to just go build it there, right? So there's a lot of
Yeah.
onboarding of supporters, the
There
city,
was.
et cetera,
Yeah.
onto something that not only has no precedent in Connecticut, but really isn't an established idea in the world in general.
No,
right?
yeah, definitely not.
So what are the things you bump up against, and
Yeah, I
what
mean,
you do about it?
Well, one, obviously we bumped up against space and just getting space. That was obviously our first thing. If you're going to create a co-working space, you sort of need physical location. So yeah, we got lucky, and the first iteration of Project Storefronts was going on at the time, and we were the first people to apply, and we were the first ones to get accepted, and we were sort of the landmark or their like sort of key space within that first row, which was the space on Orange Street that we first occupied. We had 1,200 square feet of space. They gave us like $1,000. We painted the place. We ripped up the carpets. We like bought some furniture, and we opened the doors. And it was a little crazy. I mean, we opened the doors, and within 2 or 3 months, we had 30 or 40 members, and then quickly had 60 and 80, and expanded, and and then, we were the only co-working space in the state for quite a while. But then other places caught on. They started seeing what was going on. You started seeing places in Bridgeport pop open, and Stamford, and Hartford, and that was right, sort of in this midst of all this stuff is when the state is starting to see, oh, this is like the innovation economy, and we need to like invest in these sectors, and
Sure.
they release the first, like CT Next gets formed, and the governor literally was on the steps of the Grove announcing this grant from the Grove, this statewide grant for supporting entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah.
And so, we were pretty early on in this.
Yeah. So this step right from whatever your version of is. I read Shine and get inspired, right? And I'm obviously significantly paraphrasing and doing not doing justice to your journey on that part, but you get the point. You get inspired by something, shifts your frame of reference.
Yeah.
Something else opens up as a possibility. The gap between that and I'm going to build something, right?
Yeah.
what in your background do you see that kind of helped you, or what at the time really helped you facilitate? Okay, because my experience, the vast majority of folks don't get past inspiration. I'm very anti-inspiration, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's
a lost leader for people or something like that.
It's hyperventilation.
There you go.
Seriously. What does the word inspiration literally mean? It's to take in, all right? And people just chase inspiration. They take in. That's literally how you get hyperventilated.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a big fan of expiration.
There you go.
Right? And so people don't make that leap. They get inspired. They pass out. They have a donut, and then the idea passes. Right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about that journey from that kind of inspiration to, okay, I'm going to actually do something.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that journey takes a long time. Right. It's not. It doesn't. For most people, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time, and it takes like dedication, and it takes doing late night hours and like working your ass off for a long time to make it happen. But I think for me, like around the time that we were founding the Grove, I realized that part of my personality is that I am a cultivator. I'm somebody who likes to see things come to life, and I've realized over time that I'm not a maintainer at all. I am somebody that likes to see things get off the ground and make things come to life, and that's part of the creative process for me. That is part of, I mean, you said in the beginning, like you like to talk to people who aren't just going after this because it's an opportunity or going after it because the market's good for it or whatnot. Like they're doing it because it's their art form. Yeah. And I've realized over time that entrepreneurship or creating something, sort of stimulating something so that it actually comes to life is just part of who I am and part of something that it is my creative outlet in a lot of ways. It becomes my hobby, which I guess you could say maybe is not a good thing or is a good thing or whatnot, but it's something that that really gives me a lot of life. So
that's awesome. I see a lot of parallel with the experiences we've had in developing others on this stuff. Right? It's so I'm not using your words, but tell me if I'm capturing your thought. Right? So my experience is that inspiration hits up here, maybe hits a little over here. Right? So maybe it moves me a little bit, but more so it's like I got this idea. What I'm hearing you say is that in parallel with that or separate from that, I did the work of understanding how my body likes to move, right? The direction I'm going to be reliable for moving it.
Yep.
And then I can bridge the two.
Yep.
Right? In my experience, that's critical. Right? Folks take the inspiration, take the idea, take the insight, and then try to stay in that plane without getting clear on what their natural movement is. I love the distinction of, I'm clear. I love starting stuff.
Yep.
I'm clear that I don't move in a way that's about maintaining stuff.
Yep. No.
That's wonderful clarity, because then if you don't have that, you get involved in doing something that's just struggle.
Yes.
And effort. And I don't like that. Despite today's suit, I'm a hippie. We talked about this, right? I don't like that.
We did talk about that.
Yeah. So that's great. So you got clear on what how it is you like to move.
Yeah, totally.
So you start the Grove. What's going on in your personal life during this time? So you're now imagining that this is, because that's a right stage of life. Yeah. Because like I don't know, I'm not seeding anything, but I just know that that's the right stage of life.
Let's throw some curveballs in this, okay?
Yeah.
So I have she was a 5-year-old at the time.
Yeah.
So I have a 5-year-old at the time, I think, when I'm starting the Grove. And my wife is finishing up her nursing degree at Southern that first year of the Grove, and then starts a job at Yale New Haven Hospital. And we have our second kid, and this is year 1 through 3 or something like that of the Grove. So personal life is craziness. And not only that, I'm not making any money off of the Grove. So I also am consulting on the side, and thankfully I'm a starter and somebody who likes to develop things, and so I sort of self-taught myself how to build websites and how to do branding, and I began to work with a good friend of mine who at the time was out in LA, and so we sort of create this agency called Animal Volcano Design, and really fun name. And we worked with clients all over the U.S., from Fairtrade USA to like some nonprofit sort of fundraising platforms like Pure Charity and other ones. So we had a lot of fun doing that, and that gave me the flexibility that I needed to like be at the Grove and to work out of the Grove and handle issues that were going on there while still making an income and supporting my family. So yeah, it was not easy, I'm lucky to have a spouse that like we really work well at supporting one another's dreams and sort of supporting one another's vocation and what our voice is and what we want to contribute to society. So
yeah. I actually want to talk about your wife in a little bit, because in researching Slate, the first thing I actually came across was his wife's work. She's a photographer, and I'm really enamored of her work, so we'll get to that.
Yeah.
You're hitting on another principle that I find fairly common, right? It's, again, I'm going to paraphrase, and you tell me if I'm misrepresenting. Sure. You firewalled my creative work from my work, in the sense of like, I don't, so you created a situation where I'd love to make money on the Grove.
Sure.
I don't need to make money on the Grove.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then I can maintain my vision for it,
Yes.
have it grow the way that I can see it needs to grow.
Yep.
Without compromising. I think this, whether it's artistic work or a startup like this or a toothbrush company, right? I just find that folks collapse the two, the becoming side of life, the making money side of life, and then the vision side of life, and they actually don't belong together.
Right.
I fundamentally don't think they belong together. I think it's complete. My daughter is a musical theater major, right? She's end of her junior year. This is like she's one of these people that just was blessed or cursed with knowing at the age of 5 how the next 80 years were going to go, right? Like there's no plan B. There's not even a plan 1A, right? And I think we do folks like that a disservice when we say, okay, yes, absolutely, be an artist and do it in a way where you can make money and keep a roof over your head.
Yeah.
I actually think that that's bad advice, and
Sure.
the only people I've seen that made it work, including, to the degree I've been able to do it in my life, is the two different paths. Right? So was that a conscious choice for you? Is that just necessity?
Yeah, I think that it wasn't necessarily a necessity, but it was like, and it was a conscious choice, but I think I also realized early on that I wasn't just going to do one thing. That was a real thing for me. Like, I despite my parents being sort of old hippies, that they're sort of what I would call reformed old hippies, and they got master's degrees and they got jobs in their field, and they kept the jobs in their field for their entire life, and they never took any risks. And I often wonder, well, where did I get this risk taking, ability from or whatnot? And so, I think that. But at one point in my life, and it was right before the Grove was getting going, I was talking with this guy, and I said, I don't know what. Actually, this was maybe a couple years before the Grove started. Now that I think about it, but I said, I don't know one thing that I want to do. Like, I'm not interested in going to school for like this or this or this, and like just doing that, And he just looked at me and he said, well, then just accept that. And accept the fact that you're going to do a bunch of things throughout your life. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was like, as simple as that might sound, accepting that is somewhat hard. Our society teaches us that we need to go get a normal job and like work a 9 to 5 and do that for X number of years and work up our retirement and whatever it is, I just realized that wasn't who I was, that I had a little bit more of a creative bone in my body and needed to be in a place, I've learned over time as well, that I need to be in a place of learning all the time. And if I'm not in a place of learning, then I get bored. And learning how to build websites and code was always entertaining to me, because it was, a long time ago when I was a kid, I think when I was in junior high, I wanted to be a graphic designer. Well, this was the ability to and my dad's an engineer, and so there's the ability to like design and engineer at the same time and see it come to life all in one step. And so I really liked that, and it was really fun. And we have a coding school here now. You can learn how to write in like X number of hundreds of languages and learn how to build all of this crazy stuff if you learn this stuff. And so it was this endless pool of learning that I could get into, and as well see the creative output of it at the same time while I was sitting in this community space trying to cultivate a culture that was open and inclusive and safe and was full of creativity and ideation. So,
You're bringing forward another distinction. I think Slate is really critical. We so emphasize with people, again, particularly young people, what do you want to do?
oh yeah,
What do you want to do? And it may not even be 9 to 5, right? But it's still the kind of question, what do you want to do? It's the wrong question. Who do you want to be is the right question.
who are you?
Yeah, that's it. And there's a bunch of stuff you can do, but who do you want to be? There's not a curriculum in any standard education that people see that.
Yeah.
Most households don't engage in that question.
Right.
Who you are is what Heidegger called a thrown state, right? It's just kind of default. And so you took that on consciously, right? This is who I want to be, and there's a variety of things I'm going to do. Yeah, cool. So then, what happens with the groove? I mean, so like you've already told us you like to move on,
right?
So you moved on. So
interestingly enough, I'm so at the same time I'm growing Animal Volcano, this design firm.
So hold on.
Yep.
Animal Volcano. Is that just like we just like we went to like the Wu-Tang name generator and we just picked
exactly. So the story of that is my buddy was in Colorado with a friend of his and his kid. This friend of his kid was drawing a picture. And the picture was an animal volcano.
A volcano of animals, or
a volcano with animals coming out of it.
That's
And awesome. And my buddy Ben, who now is the co-president of Brains on Fire, which is a big design agency throughout the U.S. And anyway, but Animal Volcano was this kid's drawing, and that was what inspired the name.
That's awesome.
Fire things.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of fire things.
Lots of fire things in his life for sure. So what happens with the Grove? So I'm growing Animal Volcano, and we're growing the Grove, and the Grove. I forget where it was at in this life cycle when I made this transition, but I got to the point where I got tired of it. To be honest, I was like, it was again like if I'm not learning something new all the time, I get a little bored and. There was a lot of opportunity at Animal Volcano at the time, and I started to actually consult for a nonprofit in the area called Love 146 that is a big international human rights organization mainly working to abolish sex slavery and through aftercare and prevention work. And some dear friends of mine started that organization a long time ago, so I was a part of it, or I was sort of in touch with it for a long time. And I started to do some consulting with them, and then they were in this really interesting place that I found, like, I have an eye for opportunity a lot of times as well, and they were about to merge with another major international nonprofit, and I had this opportunity to go in and become their director of marketing technology right before this major merger happened and got announced, and so I dropped Animal Volcano, and I told my director of culture at the time that I'm going to be leaving the Grove, or that I'm not going to be at the Grove all that often anymore, and I'm going to be working full time for Love 146, and that's what I did. Interestingly enough, about a month or two after I got there, the merger fell through, and so the writing was sort of on the wall for me there that it wasn't a place that I could like really scale. Now, what's cool about them now is that they have just blown up in the last few years in terms of the funding that they have to do the work that they do. They're doing tons of that work here in Connecticut now.
Are they really?
Yeah, they have 10 social workers that do rapid response work. They work with DCF. And
are they based here?
Yeah, they're headquartered here.
Okay, I want an introduction.
Yeah. Rob Morris is a great speaker. If you ever want to have
we
him.
actually chalked their work. It was one of the things obviously I thought we'd get into when I looked at your kind of background. So my Danielle Frankel, who's our COO and U of Next, and she's just on a leave of absence right now, but she's got a really massive commitment around these sorts of issues. She started a company that they produce. I'm going to butcher this. I apologize, Danielle. The vision of the company is to produce women's apparel, but have it done in places that employ former sex workers. So she actually traveled to the east, to India.
Nice.
And there are these worker cooperatives that do this kind of work, et cetera.
Sure.
So just through when she was exploring that, we were exploring some of these sort of. I'm sure she probably put them on my radar and kind of dug in. They're amazing.
They're
the work they
incredible
do.
organization.
Yeah.
Very
So now that we're having a private, so tell them the work they do.
Yeah, so
More specifically.
the main work that they do is two areas in aftercare. So children who get rescued out of child sex slavery situations, both here in the U.S., in the Philippines. I think they've still got some spots in Cambodia that they work with, and in the U.K. They have safe houses that these kids go to, and they do aftercare work with them. And then here in the U.S., they also do a lot of rapid response work. So if there's a situation that comes in, law enforcement can contact them, and they'll go out and do rapid response counseling and things like that. They do follow-ups, and they do basically case management work through DCF as well here. And then what's really cool they've done is they actually worked in collaboration with the University of New Hampshire, I believe it is, to create a curriculum that's called Not a Number that now is being taught in like hundreds of schools throughout the U.S. And it trains kids on how to avoid situations that may get them into this sort of thing, and like sort of coaches them on internet safety and all sorts of stuff. It's an incredible program. So yeah, that's just like some of the work they do. But check them out, level146.org. If you've never seen their stuff, they've got some amazing things out there that they're doing.
Great.
Yeah.
So you're with them. They get acquired. I'm sorry, the acquisition falls through.
Yeah, well, this merger falls through,
merger, I'm
right?
sorry, yeah.
And so at the time, the organization wasn't huge, and I came
Now,
in.
you studied org behavior.
Yeah.
No such thing as a merger. It's always an acquisition. But sorry.
Well, sure, that's true. Yeah.
Practitioner joke.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes. So anyway, so yeah, it sort of falls through, and I keep my eye on sort of the job market at this point because I knew that there wasn't a whole lot of room for me to grow within the organization at the time. And interestingly enough, like right after I adopted my third son, I got a call from my friend Ben Berkowitz, and they were looking for a user experience designer. And I stumbled into SeeClickFix pretty quickly after that and took a job there, and then quickly within 2 months became head of product at SeeClickFix and was head of product there until about a year ago. So
SeeClickFix was here.
For a little
bit.
For a little bit.
So again, since it was your experience, I'll let you tell them SeeClickFix because I want to note something about these experiences here. So
oh yeah, sure.
SeeClickFix
Okay, so
does what?
SeeClickFix is a 311 reporting application that allows citizens throughout many towns in the U.S. and actually anywhere you can report, but to reports non-emergency issues. So things like streetlights out or stop signs falling over, which is actually a pretty serious thing, but graffiti, sidewalk damage, other things like that. And SeeClickFix takes those requests in and then typically routes them to a back-end system within the city for public works and other things to deal with them. And so it's a pretty amazing application, and as part of sort of the Gov 2.0 or whatever you want to call it now movement to sort of crowdsource citizen government efficiency in a lot of ways and allow citizens to be a part of that feedback loop. So which is huge.
Right. So it's interesting. It's like you look at your so SeeClickFix, Level 146, the Grow. The people you're gravitating towards are a specific kind of entrepreneur.
They are very true. Yes.
So
social entrepreneurs mostly.
Well, beyond social entrepreneurs, I'll tell you what strikes me. I mean, again, an N of 3 only, but social entrepreneurs, but with a bit of an attitude.
Yeah.
Like not kind of, light and kind of like, well, we really want to have this impact. More of, we're having this impact.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
So is that who you like to run with? Or
I mean, those people are inspiring. I mean, if you ever hear Rob Morris talk, he's the founder of Level 146 or one of the founders of Level 146, and he's incredibly dynamic. If you hear him talk, you will want to either give money or go volunteer or get involved with that organization like that, And so it's those types of people that they're magnets.
Yeah.
So
Not for everybody. It's
yes,
fascinating.
not for everybody.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't want to get into that kind of stuff, but
Which is unfortunate because
Yeah.
my experience, again, another just a principle I'll pull out from that I think I'm hearing in what you're saying. My experience is that I can't find a precedent for anybody having significant, sustainable impact on society who was nice. I'm very serious.
yeah,
Now, it doesn't mean they were mean.
Sure.
Doesn't mean they were, angry, hostile, violent.
yeah,
But I will tell you, like you go, even biblical, Jesus was not nice.
yeah, no,
He said stuff nobody wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Gandhi was not nice.
Yeah.
MLK was not nice.
yeah, it's true.
They're at an edge,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So-
and they put themselves out there.
They put
You gotta
themselves
be
out
willing
there.
to
Put themselves, in the line of fire. As I say, I mean,
Yeah.
poor choice of words. In risky situations,
Uh-huh.
and it was not nice. It was not, let me just, put the opportunity into a frame that makes everybody comfortable. Quite the
Yeah.
opposite.
Very true.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So you like hanging out with those kind of
I
people.
like hanging out with those people.
You like being one of those people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that then leads you to the State House.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah, so the State House story is interesting. I mean, when I was at the Grove is in this building. How many of you guys have been in New Haven for a really long time? Several of you? How many of you remember the Horowitz Brothers department store? Awesome. So, old fabric store in downtown New Haven, and it's this huge building. It's massive. It's probably 28,000, 30,000 square feet, something like that. And the Grove was occupying about 10,000 square feet of that space. And then the Broken Umbrella Theater Company, which is a really great, cool local theater troupe, was doing a pop-up in the back warehouse space of Horowitz Brothers over an Arts and Ideas festival about 5 years ago. And I saw the space when they were doing this pop-up and just fell in love with it. I just thought this is the coolest space. It's got to be turned into a music venue or some kind of arts space. I'd always wanted to start getting into like contributing to New Haven's arts and culture scene. And so that's when the idea started like coming together, and I got a hold of my friend Eric Tate, who was an engineer at Firehouse 12 at the time, and he connected me with Carlos Wells, who was the bar manager at Firehouse 12. And so Eric and Carlos and I were sort of the first people to start talking about what is now the State House. Eric has since moved on to Colorado now and has a very cool arts space out there at his home and studio out in Denver, outside of Denver. But Carlos and I, continued to work on this over time, and the building, lots of hurdles that we had to go through. One, you got to get a lot of money to build a music space or a theater, and we needed to work with the landlord, and then the landlord sold the buildings, and then the new owner took over, and that was a really long process. And so it was like about 4 years. It was like stop, start, sort of put the business model together, try to figure it out, try to figure out funding for this thing, the whole thing, and then. The state signs this bill called SB1 that was the Innovation Places Grant, and there's this whole application process that goes into the Innovation Places Grant, and it just seems like there's an opportunity to get funding for creating this multi-purpose performance space, and that's what happened. We got a bunch of funding from the first year of the Innovation Places Grant. That grant has now since put a lot of money into this space and a lot of money into a bunch of other spaces and programs throughout the city, which is really awesome. And so, my whole idea was sort of that I'd made this impact in the nonprofit entrepreneurial sort of freelance scene with the Grove. We had won a bunch of awards, Senator Murphy was like always talking about us, and blah, blah, blah. But I was sort of done with it, and I really wanted to sort of shift my focus to the arts. And I felt like that New Haven needed a space that was going to open it up to New Haven's population, that was going to provide sort of events and performances that catered to New Haven's citizens and its constituencies, and so that's what we're really trying to do there. And I really believe that arts and culture, again, like going way back to the beginning of our conversation, has a really different impact on the economy than, say, investing in a tech hub or investing in bioscience. And so I wanted to see what that would look like and do, and so that's sort of what we're doing at State House.
So what are you learning? 3, 4, 5 months in.
Learning that opening a music venue in a town that has a lot of nightlife is hard, but we're growing and it's been really good. We've got a lot of attention for a lot of the world music stuff that we're bringing in, and what's been really great for me is just to be in the space with a really diverse array of folks, and to have people come up to me from all different backgrounds and say, thank you so much for creating the space. I don't know where this would happen if it wasn't happening here. And that's been really, really awesome. So,
Yeah, there are a lot of music venues in town, but I can't think of anybody that's pulling in the kind of music that you guys are pulling in. It's a very unique thing, right?
we are unique, yep.
So what's driving, I mean, you're pulling from everywhere in a whole eclectic set of genres, and
Yep.
so what's the filter? How are you guys kind of identifying the talent you want to bring through? Is there something?
Yeah, so
frame to it?
there is. I mean, we definitely wanted to highlight New Haven's local talent and the region's local talent, and so we do a lot of local shows. And so we try to really support the local music industry and the local artists that are here, and bring them in for either doing headline acts or supporting acts or whatnot. We've been thankful to bring on a gentleman named Rick Amante, who used to book a long time ago for Bar. He goes by Shockey Presents, or Shockey, here in New Haven, and he is known for sort of bringing in amazing world music stuff, and so we've been able to, he's sort of our main talent buyer, and so he has this unbelievable wealth of knowledge in terms of world music that is just mind-blowing to me, and he can just pick out these bands like crazy and has all these contacts so that we can bring in people from all over the world into New Haven and have these unbelievable acts perform at our space. We just had Mdu Mokhtar, which is a Tuareg guitarist from Niger who sold out 2 shows in New York, played at the State House right before he went down to New York to play those shows. And we had a huge turnout for that, and it was an incredible show. But so we've got stuff like that coming to the space all the time, and that's just been really fun to see. Yeah.
So these things are experiments, or State House in particular, experiments in art and culture as a driver of community, yeah?
Yeah.
So
let me tell you what inspired that. I wrote this quote down. So we did a lot of research when we were writing this grant, and so one of the things that comes out of Canada, Canada does a lot of these studies, and there's been a lot of studies on sort of talent attraction, and so what is the impact of culture on talent attraction? And so this is a quote from there. It's kind of an interesting one. It says, "Communities that offer a wide variety of cultural amenities are more likely to attract talent. As a result, using culture to create a vibe and a sense of attractiveness in a city is a strategy that is increasingly used by many cities, both in order to engage current residents and to attract visitors and talent. Research shows that the economic benefits of the arts go way beyond traditional factors. The ability to maintain creativity and innovation across all sectors requires access to a vibrant cultural environment. There have been many studies that establish the benefits on workers of exposure to different forms of art. In addition, culture can be used to promote open and tolerant social environments." And so quotes like this really inspired us and got us asking the question, well, this isn't just a music venue for us. This is, in a way, it's a social experiment like the Grove was. What is the impact of the arts, of a performance art space even, that's bringing in a wide variety of acts? Can we increase, tolerance? Can we create a more equitable social environment? Can we, help bring new and interesting things to New Haven that really create some kind of social change along with economic benefits?
So what are the metrics on that, right? So you're getting support and funding. I'm
not
sure
anymore.
You got it. Okay, what
Yeah,
just started out?
Yes, we
There may
started
have
out
been
with it. Yep.
Some
Yeah, so
requirements.
I think for us, like, the metrics that we're looking at is what kind of shows are we bringing in, as opposed to like what is everybody else bringing in, and making sure that we're like highlighting the demographics that we want to highlight and like bringing in the types of shows that we want to bring in. And then it's looking at like who is showing up to the spaces, how mixed are our audiences, is it a bunch of white people in the audience, or is it a big mix? And that's sort of what we're looking at, and it's a very successful show in my opinion when we have a very different types of music that comes into play, and we have a really wide range of folks in there that one of my good friends told my wife one day during a show, she said, it's so amazing to be in a space where I'm with all of my POC activist friends, POC person of color, POC activist friends, and there's all these ordinary POC folks that are here in this space, and there's all these white folks that love us in this space all together. And that was like, wow, okay, this is it's great, it's important.
Yeah.
So,
Because you've already established that, like 3 years you're gone from the State House, right? Because that's the thing. So
that's scary.
when you leave, right? Whether it's 3, it's
No,
5.
I know,
Right?
yeah.
So when you leave, what does it look like for you to kind of look at it and say, yep,
Yeah.
it's
done.
time to
I'm
leave
done.
because it got X done and now I'm
Yeah.
looking for the next thing.
I'm lucky that I have like an incredible partner in
Yeah.
this, and Carlos Wells he was bar manager at Firehouse 12 for 13 years, and is just
Big fan.
passionate about the scene, and goes back in the music space, and I know that if I need to divest at some point,
Yeah.
that he will continue to carry this vision on. So it's very different than being in a space where you don't have a partner.
Yeah.
I did not. My partner in the Grove left about 2 years in,
Got it.
and it put me as the sole person in charge of the Grove, which was very difficult.
Yeah. So that's great. But I'm actually asking a different question.
Oh, gotcha.
Like,
Was it looking for me?
no, like, what's going to have you feel like if I leave,
Oh.
I'm not going to feel bad about leaving because I could see X has been established. We do the breakthrough work, right? So we talk about breakthrough
Yeah.
results, and we talk
Yes,
about
yes,
breakthrough, right?
yes,
So a
yes.
breakthrough result is something like what you're speaking to. You've had a breakthrough. You've gotten people in the community together in a way that they've not been together before.
Right.
So that's a breakthrough result. It's something that's not happened before in your or other people's experience. A breakthrough, full stop, is that happens, and now it's reliable to keep happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Absent
Yeah.
us keep us
Yes.
keep working on it. So
Sure.
what are the
What is
kinds of
that?
things for you that if you left, when you leave,
Yeah. What does that need to be?
you say, okay, you know what? X, Y, and Z are there, so I feel good. I'm
Yeah.
okay leaving.
I think for now, like right now, I don't know all those things yet,
Yeah.
right? Because we're brand new.
Sure.
But I do think one thing that we're looking for as this year goes on is we're starting to look for the availability dates of some of these tours and artists that we're wanting to see happen. So when we start getting more and more calls from agents saying, I've got this cumbia band that I want to bring to your space, and I've got this really awesome new R&B artist that I want to bring to your space, and we've got this local hip hop guy that's coming through that we want to bring to your space. Like, that is the kind of thing that, like, we know that we have hit we've hit the audience that's much broader than just New Haven.
Yeah.
And we've begun to hit the people in the industry, and they begin to look at us.
Yeah.
It's the industry folks. I think it's when the agents from these massive booking agencies start looking at your space and saying, you guys are something different and unique, and we're going to start bringing different and unique artists to your space.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great, and that certainly meets my criteria for, it's sustainable after I leave, right? Because
Yeah.
if that happens, then whoever's at the wheel,
Yeah.
for the most part, you're gonna keep alive what you're trying to have created. That's
Yeah.
great. So for one more line of questioning for me, and then we'll open up and see what these guys want to ask you.
Sure.
So we've talked about you got 3 kids.
Yes, I do.
You've got a wife who's an amazing photographer. So talk about your family life. What is that? This is another piece of mythology that I think is we got to really work to get beyond this notion of work life and family life and work life balance. And I don't. Again, I can't find examples, significant examples of people who have an impact that's both significant and sustainable, who aren't also really actually taking care of their family relationships, right? Like I find people who have an impact, who have a horror show relationship back in their personal lives, and then it turns out that impact actually isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
It's a mythology of, so tell me about.
That's hard.
Yeah, so tell me about.
I mean, relationships are work,
Yeah.
right? And they take a lot of communication. And I think when you have 2 folks in a relationship that are entrepreneurs, like Rachel's an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur, and so we have to balance each other in a lot of ways. And sometimes our house is a shit show. We're doing a lot right now to try to get it into, order, but it's, we have kids 13, 7, and 3, so a big range. And we constantly balance one another and try to, I'll go, commutes. Our middle son, we have to commute in the middle of the day, and I'll go do that one day, and Rachel will do that the next day, or I'll come home or whatever. Photography is a nice thing because it happens on the weekends a lot. So I'm home with the kids quite a bit on the weekends when she's shooting and things like that. So that works out fairly well. But we do have to stay up late at night sometimes and work, and she's editing, till the wee hours in the morning sometimes. And it's, I won't say that it's easy, and it's not been easy. It's not easy on a marriage, and it's not necessarily easy on your kids. Sometimes I look at other families and I think, recently over the last couple of years, I've thought, it's sort of nice to have a 9-to-5 job, you don't have to think about a whole lot a lot of times, or as much, I guess. And sometimes I think I wish I was that kind of person, but I'm not, and I know I'm not. So I just have to be who I am, and Rachel's not either. And we're kind of too creative for that in a way. Or our creativity drives us in a way that doesn't necessarily allow us to do that. Rachel has a really interesting story. She got a degree in nursing, as I said, and then she had applied to Yale Midwifery School and got accepted and got a scholarship and got the best damn internship in the city that every midwife would want to get, because she knew all of them, because she was a labor and birth nurse ahead of time and stuff, and was just a great one. And then right before she needed to tell Yale, I'm coming, she said, I don't want to do this. And she switched and she became a photographer. And she always had an eye for photography, and so it wasn't hard for her to take that eye and use it. And she really does have an incredible eye. Rachel Liu Photography, if you ever want to check it out, or Rachel Liu Photo. She's quite amazing. And so, but right now she's going through a real shift and trying to focus in on what she wants her business to be. What kind of photography does she want to hone in on, and things like that. And what's that balance of making money and doing her art, and doing the kind of photography, doing the kind of artwork that she wants to create and do, versus just getting a wedding because it pays well. So.
Yeah, what I tell you, after I dug into her photography a little bit and then realized you got to marry one, so Rachel, if you're watching, what I want is I want because given how you shoot, I want this, in 12 months, the State House book, and every year there's a book. Seriously, the acts that come through, the kind of acts that come through, and a kind of stories and picture
the documentary book. Style, that would
exactly,
be cool.
And with interspersed with the community, with the local bands, and once a year you guys put out the State House's kind of book. Cool. I would love to see that if you're up for it.
There you go.
I'll help you with the Kickstarter campaign.
There you go.
So.
Yes.
Turn to you guys. I have a couple other questions, but they're more kind of follow-back. So, and these guys have been sitting.
Thanks for sitting and listening.
Yeah. So, thoughts, questions, comments for Slate, for Scott? Kiki, Scott, part of Aligning. They are the in-house district studio as well as their own independent thing, filmmakers, media, content creation, other assorted wizardry. So questions, comments, anything from you guys? Yes, sir?
I didn't come in the very beginning, but maybe you said this already. How do you guys know each other? How did you guys get connected?
Yeah, great. So I'm just going to repeat the question in case, because there are a few people here listening. So the question was how we got connected. I am a consumer of his products. So Scott actually said, you got to, like, maybe 2 weeks after he opened, said, you got to come to this place. It's right up your alley. Great music. And so I went and instantly fell in love with the place. If you've not been, just the physical layout of the place, it's so clear that it was designed by people who love live performance. I mean, just the physical layout, it's just so clear that this was designed by people who love the music and not the business of the music, right? And then to the point of the conversation here, some amazing acts have come through, so I've been there a bunch of times. And then, you know, the series, I'm kind of interviewing interesting people, and I think it might have been Scott again that said, hey, why don't you pull Slate in for one of these, and so that's how it happened. This is by far the longest we've ever talked. Other than this, there was a 20-minute phone call, and then at the State House a couple of times, hey, like that kind of conversation. Right.
What was the first show you saw? What'd you come to?
Ethiopian jazz.
Was it?
What was it?
Ethiopian jazz.
It was.
No, that wasn't the first one. No, that was
Anbassa Orchestra.
Anbassa Orchestra. That was
They're
the first
coming
time I was
back.
there. Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so great.
That wasn't the first one?
That wasn't the first one at the State House. We went to something just a week prior to that. Mountain Movers was after that, I think. There was something before Anbassa.
That's good.
I don't remember. Yeah, but
Very
it
good.
would have been, it was a couple months after you guys probably opened, so I think it was probably September-ish, October. You opened in the summer, right?
Yeah, we were in August. Yeah.
August, yeah, so it's probably like October or so, that's the first time, yeah. So, that's what I meant, is, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, you get
Go,
to.
Damien.
You said this, the 3 year. You mentioned the thing about 3 years.
Oh, he did. But yes.
I
get it.
The context of that.
The context was basically like, I'm a cultivator and I like to start things. And so if you're a starter, there's sort of a timeline that comes with starting things that you end up falling into a place of maintaining. And as soon as I fall into a place of maintaining, that's when I know that I need to exit.
Awesome. I'm really taking that personally and relate a lot to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. Adam?
What have you learned from some of your partnerships?
Oh. So the question was what Slate's learned about it from some of these partnerships.
I think that, you mean like business partnerships?
Yeah.
So partnerships are interesting. I've had a lot of them over the years. So before I actually created The Grove, I ran a remodeling business throughout my, I worked myself through college remodeling houses, and I had a partner in that, and then I had a partner in The Grove, and I had a partner in the State House, or I had a partner in Animal Volcano Design, and all these different partners. And I think that what I've really learned is that partnership is so much about personality and communication, and that, you don't interesting enough, I've been really good friends with a lot of my partners, and even my partner Noah in my design business, him and I developed a business plan for something similar to the State House when we were painting houses, and my friend Ben and I, who was in Animal Volcano with me, we still talk. We just talked last week, and we're still really good friends, and we still really connect around work and vocation and sort of what we do. But I think that, personality is just a really important thing in partnerships, and I think finding people that you can communicate really well with and trust, Carlos is one of the partners that I've had that I wasn't friends with really before I became a partner. And yet, we didn't necessarily need that. We had a level of trust and support for one another that just came into the mix because of our backgrounds and because we sort of saw eye to eye on the vision. And I think that's another thing that's like super important. My partner in the Grove, we didn't necessarily have the same vision for the Grove. And that ultimately sort of led that to shake off. You know, he didn't leave because we had some falling out or anything like that. He left because, you know, he got a job opportunity, but we didn't, and I know we didn't. We didn't really have the same vision for what the Grove was, and I ended up taking the Grove and pivoting it right before he left, and so, you know, I think that vision and communication and just personality traits are pretty darn important, just like in any relationship, I guess. So, you know. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, that ties to the conversation about, you know, kind of what do you want to do versus who do you want to be. I found a similar thing, right, in partnerships and business partnerships. I mean, it's not that, you know, I want to go out of my way to be in a partnership with somebody who's, you know, technically incompetent, but the other way around, right, like basing the partnership on technical competence, on what they can do well,
Right.
it's never worked out well.
Yeah.
Basing it on who they are,
Yeah.
and how that fits with who I am and who I aspire to be.
Yeah.
We can figure out the technical stuff,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay. Just consistently found that to be the case.
Very true. Nikki?
Can you talk a little bit about your ideas around just monetizing in general, like where you see that fitting into like
Business
inspiration,
models?
aspiration, monetize, you know, how do you fit
Yeah.
that into what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question because, you know, I've, like, the Grove, I never got a full salary off of the Grove. It wasn't something that ever paid me very much at all, if anything, year over year. And the State House right now, I'm like sort of the last on the payroll to get anything. And so, you know, I think that, but when I'm looking at a business and I have to actually build a model for it. And so with the Grove, I built a model very early on and told my partner at the time, I said, look, this model's not going to produce a lot of money for us, just so you know. And he thought differently, and I said, no, look at the model. Like, it's not that scalable, you know, unless you just get a massive space, like, and then maybe it becomes a little bit more scalable. But it's never going to pay, like, you know, a ton of money to anybody. But, you know, at the same time, you look at those models and you think, okay, can they be sustainable, you know, and is there, you know, can you build out the pricing and packaging and whatever you need to build out within those business models and look at your audience size and all that stuff, and can you create a sustainable model that might pay you something or just will become sustainable, and then knowing that, you know, I mean, I'm lucky I have a skill set that allows me to consult and that allows me to do to not have to take a full-time job right now, you know. It gives me the flexibility that I need. But I worked really damn hard to get that skill set. And it didn't just fall in my lap. So I think you've got to be willing to do that as well. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
One of the, I don't know if, you know, if this resonates in any of your experience, but one of the things that if you're doing something creative, right, and creative, again, can be entrepreneurial work, right? I mean, creative being something expressive, something that doesn't have an existence absent you're giving it existence, et cetera. There's a value in certainly planning for monetization, planning a business plan, and right. But I've found that there's richer opportunity on the monetization side in areas that I would have never conceived of. All right? And working with others, same thing. And so it's to get cutesy about it, it's a bit of a gardening analogy, right? Where what I want to pay attention to, you know, I want to pay attention to my harvest plan and have that ahead of time, but I really do want to pay attention to what's sprouting. And if that requires a certain pivot, still within the same garden, I can pivot there if I need to, if I need a harvest, right? Versus sticking to my harvesting plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you, in terms of what you're, it's almost like a cultivating instead of like a forced kind of growing.
Yeah.
You watch what's actually growing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You might think that squash will do better, but then you notice something that you like.
Yep.
I mean, you can still lead, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And listen,
Exactly.
Simple as if you have a consulting business, right?
Yeah.
And you think, so I'm passionate about this X type of consulting, and I've got this business plan for it, and this is how it's going to make money over the course of 3 years. And you start doing a podcast to support your consulting business. It's useful to pay attention if you start getting, 75,000 followers on your podcast. Maybe don't start pushing them the consulting offer. Maybe you can monetize that
Yeah.
Right.
and still go move on with this passion. But you know what? We're going to eat cucumbers for a while until the watermelons come in.
Yeah.
Those have calories, even though watermelon's my passion. But those are starting to harvest, so maybe I can, if I need to, I can monetize there. I find that particularly creative-based entrepreneurs, passion-based entrepreneurs, can sometimes miss that. They get a little overly purist about it, right? Where I can only harvest in the direction of what I set out to plant. Yeah? So.
Agreed. That's good. Scott?
So, what's been sprouting that you didn't expect? What are some unintended benefits that are happening? I mean, it's very much a hub of a wheel for several communities now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the intention. I see it happening.
Right.
But I want to know from your perspective, you're seeing things on a bigger picture. I'm out at all these shows.
Yeah.
I'm looking at like who's coming, who's leading.
Right.
So just real quick, because it's a great question. The question was, what's Slate seeing that's sprouting up they didn't expect that has value? I'm just paraphrasing.
I think right now some of the opportunities for different kinds of events are sprouting up. Like right now, that's sort of like what's happening right now. Like right now, as we speak, we've got some like Sony music executive over there doing a talk, and like that's not something that we could have ever like worked through, but it's through like the Connecticut Office of the Arts, which is really cool. And then right now there's some interesting stuff happening with like the local CPTV, NPR, WNPR sort of affiliates about potentially starting some stuff with them. There's some really cool, interesting stuff going on, and I feel like, where we started bringing in world music stuff because we wanted to create a space for it in New Haven. It wasn't our intention to sort of broaden that out and maybe market that to a much broader audience through other mediums, but like that potentially is an opportunity right now that we're looking at. So yeah, those are a couple of things, I guess.
Has there been any interest in collaborating with those POC activists you mentioned? I thought that
Yeah,
was
we
very
have.
interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we've been working on doing some benefits like for them. We hold space for. Our space is very much a space that we try to hold space. So we've held some like, anti-bias, anti-racism workshops out of our space, some things like that. So we're trying to do more with that. And I've got another like little side project that I'm spinning up that's called Radical, and it's basically a platform in which artists can connect with causes to support causes, and so it's very artist driven to say like, as an artist, I want to support X cause, and you can purchase these like new tracks for me or goods from me in support of these causes. So we're I've been working on that with a couple of other friends on the side over the last couple of years. So anyway, but yeah, we're definitely like looking at that a lot for sure. So.
So when you explore these opportunities, does it feel like more of a binge?
A binge?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought about it like that, but maybe.
And between them, what's it look like, or does it go from one to another?
It doesn't necessarily just leap from one to another. They bleed a lot, But that's interesting that you call it a binge, because I do kind of get in that sense. Like, I think that's a really good term to use. Like when I was starting to go after the State House and like really in it, it is something where like I was head over heels into it. It was definitely like a binge, just trying to get it off the ground and like make it happen and push it forward. And I can see that in other things that we've done too. I think anytime you're trying to get something off the ground, there is a little bit of that element to it. Like it's sort of consuming in a way. But yeah, that's good. Yeah.
What have been your biggest failures?
Not exiting fast enough. That's been probably one of my biggest failures. With the Grove, I should have like let that thing go a long time ago. As soon as I got to that point of realizing sort of where we were at, that like it was in a place that was very sustainable and could continue to grow, I should have backed out, and I didn't. I sort of kept it on for too long. That's definitely been one of the biggest ones. And then I think that it's, there's, going back to like Nikki's question about monetization and stuff like that. I mean, I've never been one to look at like making a bunch of money off of anything. But I do think that you've got to be able to like have a model that actually is going to scale and isn't just going to be sustainable. Because I think I've been a small business entrepreneur in a lot of ways and not a scaled entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur, whatever you like. I'm not going out and getting VC funding for these things. There are smaller initiatives that are more brick and mortar, and brick and mortar is damn hard in like right now, and that has been a real challenge too. So, yeah, Scott.
So just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
Is there overlap usually? I know there's a little bit of overlap in this last phase going from the Grove to the State House.
Yep.
You feel like you should have let the Grove go sooner to focus on the State House?
Yeah, I just think I should have let the Grove go sooner because it was in a spot that needed me to transition out, and I think that it could have been handled better. Not necessarily, not that I would have like jumped right to the State House at the time, because I wouldn't have, because I wasn't in my purview at the time. But like, I do think that it would have been smarter for me to like get out of it at a certain point. But yeah, I think it definitely has overlap. I mean, I was at SeeClickFix while I was writing the grants for the Innovation Places grants with Michael Harris from the city, and was with SeeClickFix the whole time that we were developing the State House. And thankfully Ben is a really cool guy and like sort of lets SeeClickFix workers have passion projects that they're interested in, but yeah, I think there's all sorts of bleed over. I do consulting work right now. That's how I support my family. So yeah.
Speaking of the consulting work,
Yep.
one of the things that's kind of interesting for me to pick up is you mentioned the consulting work. You mentioned that this is kind of
Yep.
a really great way for you to support your family and all of that.
Yep.
So first of all, what's the focus of your consulting work?
Mhm.
And then related to that, how is your voice in your consulting work different, or maybe from your personal experience,
Yep.
compared to some of your more creative entrepreneurial endeavors?
Interesting enough, my voice is not that different when it comes to my consulting work. I consult in web design and development and program, and then I do a lot of work with nonprofits around donor management and programmatic impact. So work with a lot of nonprofits on how they're tracking their programmatic impact. So I build like database systems and software systems for them to track what they're doing and use it for grant reporting and other things like that. Mm-hmm. And so, I think what's interesting about being an entrepreneur is like you've got to learn a lot, or you've got to learn a little bit at least about a lot of things, right? And you've got to be able to pick up the ball on X, Y, and Z. And so in my consulting practice, like I'm able to do that. And because of my background, I'm able to like look at systems and be able to like put them together for people, and so that's like a fun thing for me to do, is to be able to like, create that stuff. And when I was head of product at SeeClickFix, I mean, that was sort of my job, was to like, sort of build this software platform and integrate systems and build stuff for users. And so it's really fun to be able to go do that for other folks. But I try to do it in arenas and areas that are interesting to me. So right now I've got like a consulting project with a group that provides legal services to veterans, and I've got a group that is doing a lot of dementia work, dementia care and public awareness on dementia and dementia things in the state of Connecticut, and that's super fun. And so it's interesting stuff. So it's always fun to learn new things. So yeah.
How has entrepreneurship affected your parenting style?
That's a good thing. It's interesting. Like I think it's it's something where you try to like encourage your kids to be creative and to take risks, and like that's one thing that I've noticed. Like a couple of years ago, my daughter and I had this conversation. She's the older of my kids, and I was like, I want you to be adventurous this summer, like, and try new things and like take risks. And so like that's something that I'm letting. I think is interesting. I see myself
So
coaching
she's telling
in
you
different
this, or
ways.
you told her this?
Yeah, I told her this, but I'm telling myself this at the same time. I think is really what's going on. But what's interesting is though I do look back at my parents and I'm like, they didn't teach me this stuff, but they cultivated this creativity in me that gave me the confidence to be able to take risks, And I see other folks in my life and other people that just don't, they just don't have the appetite for it, which is fine. I think it's great, like people don't need, it's a good thing that everybody's not an entrepreneur. It would be a real problem, but, or interested in taking risks, but I think that, it's interesting to me to sort of look at how I was raised and like who I am and how that translates in. It's definitely a hard question. Or it's just a hard journey to like walk through, I think. So, yeah.
I think there's a lot of, so I've only got one, and she's
Yeah.
20, so I'm done.
Oh, you're done, man.
Done.
You're out of it.
No, never done. But
Pretty much,
thankfully never done. What we said about monetization for me applies to raising children, right? The plan I have is dangerous because she may grow in a direction that isn't part of my plan. And if I'm not willing to pay attention, I'm going to stifle a thing that wants to grow.
Yeah.
And so I think that in the development of human beings, whether they're the little human beings that are in our homes,
Yeah.
or the the adults that come into programs or things like this, there's no act of demanding, insisting, or mandating that doesn't come at the price of shutting down voice.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, it's necessary. I demand you don't, play with the knife set, right? That's a good demand to have, right? But it comes with the cost of shutting down voice, so we use it extremely judiciously.
Yeah.
And allowing and inviting more, it lets the emergent growth happen.
Totally. And I think you like going back to sort of some of the talks on like personality and things like that, like you parent towards personality, not necessarily like occupation. You look at who your kids are and sort of what makes them unique and try to like stimulate those things in there. My kids are very different, all three of them. They're super different personalities, So you have to be really intentional about cultivating like that particular imagination that one of them has versus this or that, So it's yeah.
It's when I do speaking stuff, with like high school audiences, college audience, but even adult audiences, it applies to all of you. None of your parents wanted you. My parents didn't want me. Your parents didn't want you. You don't want your kids. I don't want my daughter. How could your parents have wanted you? Right? They wanted a 5'7", brown hair, who decides to part it on the right side, really loves ska music and sushi, and wants to be an entrepreneur in music space. How could they have wanted that? It's all a surprise, right? The kids who turn out exactly like what the parents wanted before they were born are a psychotic mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If at 25 you're exactly what your parents wanted, you're a mess. You're a complete and utter mess. Right?
Yeah.
It's an act of gardening. It's an act of emergence, right?
That's true.
And like with the entrepreneurial side, there's some, judicious, narrow slices where we say, nope, we got a plan for that one.
Yep.
We're not letting you improvise on that one. No knives, no running around with scissors kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Until you're, old enough to decide for yourself, and then you can run around with scissors, and then it's on your accountability. So, theater,
Yeah.
acting, directing, right? Acting,
I
yeah.
acted,
Tell me
I
about it.
directed, I did everything pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I did a lot
I
of
could still see it.
in
You
high
get to-
school and in college a little bit. and I was the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, which was really fun. And I was I think I'm the only kid that ever got to do, my drama teacher, theater teacher, created an internship for me in the theater department when I was a senior in high school, and I got paid to build sets and do lighting and be in the plays and it was awesome. And I think I'm the only person who ever got that, actually. Like, no one else got this work study program that I did, but yeah, it was really cool. And I think I did theater when I was like a little kid too. My mom put me in some kind of theater camp one time, and it just I was just that kid. I mean, I like acting. I was just, so even now today, I told Carlos, I said, I want to bring back the MC. I feel like MCs are dead in the music industry. Now when you go see a show, nobody introduces the band. They just get up on stage and start playing, and then there's an intermission, and then the next band there's a break, right? And the next band sets up, and then the next band gets up and starts playing. Nobody gets up and says who this band is and engages the audience and gets them pumped up and then introduces them. And I'm I want to bring that back just because I want to be on stage for a little bit. I'm not a musician, by the way, y'all. So
I'm all in favor.
Yeah.
If you get bored of it, I want to audition for the spot too.
Oh, there you go.
It'll be a lot of
Very
fun.
good. I think it's just a cool thing to do. And I think what's interesting about it too is that it does engage the audience in a way that's doesn't typically happen. So.
Anything, I mean, listen, your space doesn't invite this anyway, but anything that breaks down the consumptive relationship with the thing, right?
Yes.
I'm here, you go most music venues, I'm here to consume this piece of music.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Now again, your venue doesn't lend itself that to anyway, but what you're speaking to for me is it just further builds in that this is a collective experience we're having, and I'm the kind of facilitator of that experience, the holder of the space.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
breaks down the consumption, makes it more, again, something we're engaged with. I share with you, Deadhead from the old days, about 200 shows, right? And one of the miracles of that experience was that it's cliche and silly 40 years later to talk about, but it truly was a collective experience. 10,000 people, it was a collective experience.
Yep.
You're not there to consume music. It was
Right.
it was a
You're
collaborative.
all-
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's good.
Very little of that left in the world. So yeah, so definitely go be an MC. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
See that in front of the shows. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
So any other kind of artistic outlets? So what else?
For
do you,
me?
Yeah.
Not right now. I mean, I do I do a little drawing here and there and some other things like that, but
Yeah.
not right now. No
Okay.
other artistic outlets. I mean, I always did drawing and sort of sketching and worked with pastels and other things like that, but right now I haven't been doing other things.
Do you guys have outlets like that? You guys do creative stuff? No, a couple of no's.
Ecstatic dancing.
Yeah, you're. I know you're. What is it? Ecstatic dancing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good.
These guys are some of my crew from there is here tonight. That's probably one of my newer hobbies that I really
Ecstatic
like to get.
dancing.
Yeah.
Like Sufi ecstatic dancing, or
I don't know, Damien. Is it
Is it
Sufi
more
ecstatic
general?
dancing?
It's just a cathartic experience.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So it's not a particular discipline.
No,
It's just
yeah,
more.
right.
Dance that you do when you're alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at home, just going wild.
Yeah.
So I love to dance. It's something
Yeah.
that I really like to do. And often if you're at a show, you'll see me dancing. But I don't get to go to ecstatic dance all that much anymore because we have a lot of stuff going on Thursday nights when they do it. But it's a friend of mine introduced me to it. I was out dancing with her one night, and she said, "You would really love this thing. You need to go check out this thing called ecstatic dance." I said, "What is it?" And she was like, "Well, it's kind of like a mix of yoga and dance." And I was like, "Huh, that's really cool." So I went and checked it out and just fell in love with it. And basically, what it is, it's you begin with a very slow meditative vibe in the room, and it's stretching and body awareness and connection, and then it builds up into a full-on dance party for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
And then it comes back down into a very meditative space and typically Damien's got sound healers that are in and other folks like that, and it's quite incredible actually. If you're into that stuff, you're an old hippie, I'm a hippie, you gotta be a little hippie now to go to this thing, or definitely at least comfortable with yourself to to shake your ass, but it's a good time. So.
It's yet another, again, just unfortunate piece of 20th century mythology that the body is a conveyance vehicle for the self, as opposed to the body is the self, right?
yeah,
And so we're constantly dancing. I mean, the communication that goes on is so much more in the kinesthetic than it is in the verbal and the visual.
Yeah.
And so we're already dancing with each other.
Yeah.
But it's just so often bounded by design elements
Yeah.
that inhibit
Well, in
actual
Western
engagement.
culture is like crazy like that. I mean, I grew up in a very like waspy culture, very evangelical Christian environment in Northwest Arkansas, which
Right.
has no body movement practice to it as a religion. And so actually recently I've also, after getting it, or actually I think it was before I got into ecstatic dance, I started getting into Qigong, and that has brought a lot of joy and peace into my life, like through that. So that's an art form, I guess, that I'm trying to do a little bit here and there.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I've done a bit of dervishing. So the Sufi, if you're familiar with the world
Yeah.
of the dervishes.
I know the name, but yeah.
So it's a meditative practice, comes
Right.
out of the Sufi Muslim
Yeah.
tradition. So I've
Yeah.
done that in Greece and India,
Oh,
and then
very cool.
here in New York, there's a group back, way back.
Yeah. Nice.
But it is, I mean,
It's a spinning or
it's
something,
spinning,
right?
but
Yeah,
it's a
it's
very
very cool.
specific,
Right,
and it
totally.
is this physical engagement that shifts.
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff.
That's cool.
Tried that.
I'm sorry.
I tried that, and they've had some of those facilitators come to the New York City ecstatic dance.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
Amazing.
You know, the full stack development school here, Holbert next door, they have this giant open space that isn't being used yet. So I think
there
once
you
they
go.
have students, we got to hire you guys to do an ecstatic
There you
dance.
go.
How's that
Totally do it.
as part of
There
the
you go.
curriculum?
Yeah.
Yeah. 30
Get
full
some of
stack-
those engineers.
Get some of those
That would be
engineers to do
awesome.
some kinesthetic work.
Oh, me too. I would do that.
I have a great, and listen, I mean, they're in good hands with Nadine and her crew and this environment that they're in, but I have a very more global concern about, coders and data scientists
Yeah.
are to the 21st century what finance and marketing were to the 20th century, right? They are the people designing and managing the world.
Oh my God, seriously.
And unlike the people who got trained in finance and marketing, who had to at least begrudgingly get exposed to history and literature, and right, these guys can get developed sitting like this,
Yeah.
and completely forgetting they have a body, they have a
That's
heart, they have a
true.
spirit, any of that, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, what these guys do is a more full human development in the context of learning those skills.
That's
But
good.
in general, that's
Yeah.
not how we're developing people, right? So it's
That's
you got to bring the ecstatic dance to universities,
There you go.
more traditional universities.
That's
Yeah.
good.
So
As we wrap up,
Yeah.
I'll tell folks what's coming up at the State House if
Perfect.
you're
I was just
interested.
gonna say, yeah.
Because I think it's we got some cool shows. So Friday night we have a probably some of the best local R&B and sort of soul funk musicians that will then spin into like a dance party. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, come out for that. Saturday night is Goodnight Blue Moon, which is an awesome local new folk band. Great stuff. So check that out. Tickets are selling fast for that one, so if you're interested, get them. And then Sunday, we've got some of the best local hip-hop that you've ever seen. If you don't know any of the local hip-hop folks around here, we've got some of the best coming on Sunday. So
wonderful. I'll be there Sunday.
come Sunday.
I'm coming
it's
Sunday.
a great show.
Friday, Saturday, I got my own show, but I'll be there Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah. You guys can go Friday, Saturday.
yeah.
And you guys can go Friday, Saturday. So listen, thank you guys for being here. Thank you folks for being here. And Slate, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you.
And
This
for
was great.
for what you and Carlos are doing. Thank you for the community. And just really looking forward to seeing where you guys expand to, and looking forward to hopefully I don't know, figuring out other ways to play together. We're practically within walking distance. So
Let's do
yeah,
it. Yeah.
cool.
That's good. Cool.
Thank you, my
Thank
friend.
You.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome
Appreciate
to
it.
hang around and mingle